Hey there, future cloud security masters. So you're diving into the world of the CCSP exam, huh?
That's awesome.
That's awesome. We're here to help you navigate through some of the trickier concepts and get you feeling confident to crush that test.
It's a challenging certification, but with the right prep, you'll be well on your way to earning those CCSP credentials.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest areas you'll need to master is vulnerability management. It's a huge part of cloud security, and the exam really dives deep into it.
It's easy to think of vulnerability management as just patching systems, but it's so much more than that. In the cloud, where everything's constantly changing, you need to think about the whole life cycle. That means scanning for vulnerabilities, analyzing what you find, fixing those issues, and of course, keeping detailed records of everything.
Not to mention all the regulatory requirements like
Mhm.
PCI DSS and FISMA, right?
Right.
Those are definitely must-knows for the exam.
Absolutely.
It's no joke. Think about the sheer volume of code in modern systems. The Linux kernel alone has something like 24 million lines. That's just one piece of software. Imagine trying to find a needle in a haystack the size of a football field. With so much code, vulnerabilities are bound to pop up.
Exactly. And that's why analyzing scan reports is such a critical skill for security analysts and for acing that CCSP exam. You'll spend a good chunk of your time digging through those reports.
Okay, so let's say I'm staring at one of these reports,
Yeah.
and it's pages long.
Mm.
Where do I even begin?
Prioritization is key. You can't tackle everything at once, so you need a system. This is where understanding those 5 key factors for triaging vulnerabilities comes in: severity, criticality, sensitivity, difficulty of remediation, and exposure. Those will help you determine what needs your immediate attention.
So what does that look like in practice? Let's say we've got a vulnerability with a high severity score, but it's really difficult to remediate. How do we balance that against something that's maybe less severe, but super easy to fix?
That's where those other factors come in. You need to consider the criticality of the affected system. Is it a core server or something less vital? What's the sensitivity of the data involved? And how exposed is that vulnerability to potential attackers?
Right. It's about weighing all those factors to make an informed decision. And remember, crying wolf all the time isn't going to do you any favors. You've got to make sure you're validating those vulnerabilities and understanding the difference between true positives, false positives, and all the variations. This is something that might trip you up on the exam, so make sure you're solid on those concepts.
Absolutely. Let's say a report flags a vulnerability in the Ubuntu kernel. That sounds really scary. Before you go into panic mode, take a deep breath and dig into the specifics. What exactly did the scanner pick up on? What inputs and outputs triggered that alert?
So it's like being a detective, right? You're looking for clues to piece together the whole story.
Precisely. You need to verify if the system actually has that vulnerable version of the kernel. Sometimes the scanner might be picking up on something that's been patched or mitigated already.
Okay, so we've analyzed the report, we've prioritized the vulnerabilities. Now what?
Now we start connecting the dots. This is where correlating scan results comes into play. We're talking about seeing the bigger picture, not just individual vulnerabilities.
So if we keep seeing the same types of vulnerabilities popping up across different systems, that could be a sign of a deeper issue, right?
Exactly. It could point to a systemic problem like developers not getting proper security training, or maybe a flaw in your configuration management process.
And this is where those industry standards like PCI DSS come in, right? They give us a framework for evaluating and scoring vulnerabilities consistently.
Great. PCI DSS is a great example because it's super specific about vulnerability scoring. You'll need to know that for the exam. For example, anything with a CVSS score of 4 or higher is a big red flag according to PCI DSS. But internal information is also crucial. Your configurations, logs, those can all help you make sense of those scan results.
It's like putting together a puzzle. You've got the pieces from the scan reports, the framework from industry standards, and your internal knowledge of the systems and configurations. And don't forget historical trends. If you see the same vulnerabilities cropping up over and over, you know there's probably a deeper issue that needs addressing.
And addressing those root causes is where you really make a difference. Think about proactive security. Providing developer training, tightening up configuration management. Those are the kinds of things that can prevent vulnerabilities from appearing in the first place.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground with vulnerability management,
Okay.
but now I want to get a little more hands-on. Let's talk about penetration testing.
Now we're talking. Penetration testing takes things a step further than vulnerability scanning. We're not just looking for weaknesses, we're actively trying to exploit them to see if they can be turned into a real attack.
It's like putting your defenses to the test,
Yeah.
right? Seeing how they hold up under pressure.
Exactly. And there are different types of penetration tests depending on how much information the testers have access to.
Right. There's white box testing, where the testers know everything about your systems, kind of like simulating an insider attack. Then there's black box testing, where they know nothing beforehand, just like a real attacker coming in from the outside.
And in the real world, we often see gray box testing, which is a combination of the two. You give the testers some information, but not everything. It's a good balance between realism and efficiency.
Now, this is where it gets interesting. The NIST methodology for penetration testing involves this back and forth between discovery and attack phases.
The discovery phase is all about reconnaissance, gathering information about the target systems. Think open source intelligence, footprinting, even things like war driving to find wireless networks.
I've even heard of warflying, using drones to find vulnerabilities. Now that's taking it to the next level.
It's pretty incredible what attackers can do these days, and once you've found a potential weakness, you move into the attack phase. This is where you try to gain access, escalate your privileges, and see how far you can get.
And this is where concepts like pivoting and persistence come into play, right?
Exactly. Pivoting is basically using one compromised system to jump to another. Think of it like hopping from one stepping stone to the next, getting deeper and deeper into the network.
And persistence is all about maintaining access, even after a vulnerability is fixed. It's like leaving a back door open so you can come back later.
It's a crucial concept to understand because real attackers are always looking for ways to stay hidden and keep their access open. It's a constant cat and mouse game.
Okay, so we've seen how penetration testing can help us find and exploit vulnerabilities. But what if we could turn the tables on the attackers, lure them in, and catch them red-handed? That's where deception technologies come in.
Deception technologies are all about setting traps and tricking attackers into revealing themselves. It's a proactive way to defend your systems and gather intelligence on your adversaries.
It's like setting a spider web and waiting for a fly to land. One of the coolest examples of this is darknets sections of your network that are intentionally left unused. Any activity there is a huge red flag.
Think of it like a decoy town in a Western movie. You're waiting to see who shows up and what they're after. Any traffic headed to those darknet addresses is almost certainly malicious.
Okay, so we've got these darknets set up. What happens when an attacker takes the bait?
That's where honeypots and honeyfiles come in. Honeypots are systems that are designed to look irresistible to an attacker, but they're actually carefully monitored traps. Imagine a server labeled financial data backup. It's practically begging to be hacked.
It's like a Venus flytrap, right?
Yeah.
Luring unsuspecting insects with its sweet nectar. But as soon as they land, snap.
And when an attacker takes the bait, you get to watch their every move. You can learn about their techniques, their tools, and their objectives. It's invaluable intelligence. And those honey files are files that look like sensitive data, but are actually filled with junk, designed to mislead attackers and waste their time.
It's all about creating this illusion of vulnerability, luring them in, and then watching their every move.
Deception technologies add a whole new layer of defense to your security strategy. And one of the most effective tactics is the DNS sinkhole.
Wait, isn't DNS poisoning a bad thing?
It can be, but in this case, we're using it for good. When a system gets infected with malware and joins a botnet, it's usually given a list of command and control servers to contact. A DNS sinkhole redirects traffic intended for those malicious servers to a safe location.
So instead of connecting to the bad guys, the infected system is actually talking to us, right?
Exactly. It's like setting up a roadblock and diverting traffic away from a dangerous area. Plus, you can use that sinkhole to gather information on infected systems within your network.
So it's a way to disrupt botnets, protect your systems, and gather valuable intelligence. Pretty clever, huh?
It's a great example of how understanding attacker techniques can lead to innovative defensive strategies. And speaking of understanding attackers, we can't forget about the human element. Let's talk about social engineering. It's fascinating how often we focus on the technical defenses while completely overlooking the human factor.
It's like building a high-tech fortress, but leaving the front door wide open.
Exactly.
And that's exactly where social engineering comes in.
It preys on our natural inclination to trust and be helpful, exploiting those very human vulnerabilities. Think about all those phishing emails we get. They often look incredibly convincing, even using real company logos and branding.
And they play on our fears, like that email that looks like it's from your bank saying there's a problem with your account.
Oh, yeah.
You click the link, enter your login credentials, and bam, the attacker has access to your money.
It's scary.
It's frightening how easily we can fall for these tricks.
Yeah.
And it's not just limited to emails either, right? It can happen over the phone, through text messages, even face-to-face.
Absolutely. I've heard stories of attackers impersonating IT support, calling employees and tricking them into revealing their passwords.
Yeah.
It's amazing what people will divulge when they're caught off guard. And these attacks are becoming more sophisticated all the
It's
time.
like they're reading our minds,
Yeah.
figuring out exactly what buttons to push to get us to comply.
They use psychological tactics, creating a sense of urgency or playing on our emotions to make us more likely to let our guard down. And they do their homework, gathering information about their targets from social media and other online sources to tailor their attacks.
So how do we protect ourselves from these master manipulators?
Awareness is key. The more you understand about the different types of social engineering attacks and the tactics they use, the better equipped you'll be to spot them.
So it's about training ourselves to be skeptical, to question anything that seems fishy, and to verify any requests for information or access.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to ask questions, double-check email addresses, and report anything that seems off, no matter how small it might seem. Remember, it's not just about protecting ourselves, it's about safeguarding our entire organization.
Right, because these social engineering attacks can have devastating consequences for businesses, leading to data breaches, financial losses, and serious damage to their reputation.
Absolutely. Which is why having strong security policies and procedures in place, along with comprehensive employee training, is absolutely critical. Everyone needs to be on the same page, working together to create a culture of security.
So let's say, despite our best efforts, a security incident does occur. What happens then?
That's where a well-defined incident response plan comes in. Think of it as your playbook for dealing with these situations. It outlines the steps to take, who's responsible for what, and how to communicate effectively throughout the process.
So it's like having a fire drill, right? You practice what to do so that when the real thing happens, everyone knows their role and can react quickly and calmly.
Exactly. The key is to have this plan in place before an incident occurs, so you're not scrambling to figure things out in the heat of the moment.
So walk me through the basics. What are the essential steps in an incident response plan?
First and foremost, you need to contain the incident. This might involve isolating affected systems, shutting down network connections, or even taking servers offline. The faster you can stop the bleeding, the better.
Time is definitely of the essence, right? Every minute that an attacker has access to your systems increases the potential damage they can inflict.
Absolutely. Once you've contained the incident, you need to figure out what happened. This involves gathering evidence, analyzing logs, interviewing witnesses, basically playing detective to understand the scope of the breach, how it occurred, and what data was compromised.
So it's like a forensic investigation, piecing together the clues to solve the mystery.
Exactly. This information is crucial for remediation and recovery. You need to know what systems were impacted, what vulnerabilities were exploited, and what data needs to be restored. And once you've patched things up, it's important to learn from the experience.
Right, because no one wants to repeat the same mistakes.
Exactly. A post-incident review helps identify weaknesses in your security posture and make improvements to prevent similar incidents from happening again. It's an ongoing process of preparation, detection, response, and recovery.
So it's not just about putting out the fire, it's about learning how to prevent those fires from starting in the first place.
Precisely. And that brings us to the concept of defense in depth. It's a security strategy that involves layering multiple security controls to create a more resilient defense.
It's like building a castle with multiple layers of walls, moats, and guard towers, making it much harder for an attacker to breach your defenses.
Exactly. Each layer provides a different type of protection, so even if one layer fails, the others are there to back it up. For example, you might have a firewall at the perimeter of your network, intrusion detection systems on your servers, and antivirus software on your endpoints.
And of course, we can't forget the human element. Security awareness training is a crucial part of defense in depth, helping to prevent social engineering and other attacks that target people.
Absolutely. It's about creating a culture of security where everyone is aware of the threats and takes responsibility for protecting their own systems and data. Defense in depth isn't just about technology, it's about people, processes, and policies working together to create a more secure environment.
It's a holistic approach, recognizing that no single control is perfect and that multiple layers of protection are necessary to effectively mitigate risk. And it's an ongoing process, constantly evolving to keep up with the ever-changing threat landscape.
Speaking of essential building blocks, let's talk about cryptography. It's the foundation for securing data, both in transit and at rest.
It's like a secret code, right? Scrambling information in a way that makes it unreadable to anyone who doesn't have the key to unlock it.
Exactly. And it's used everywhere, from securing websites and online transactions to protecting sensitive files and communications. There are two main types of cryptography: symmetric and asymmetric.
Okay, break those down for me.
Symmetric cryptography uses the same key to encrypt and decrypt data. Think of it like having a single key that can lock and unlock a door. Asymmetric cryptography, on the other hand, uses two different keys: a public key and a private key. The public key can be shared with anyone, while the private key must be kept secret.
So it's like a mailbox with two slots, one for incoming mail and one for outgoing mail. Anyone can drop a letter in the incoming slot, but only the person with the key to the outgoing slot can retrieve the mail.
That's a great analogy. Asymmetric cryptography is used for things like digital signatures and secure email, allowing you to verify the sender's authenticity and ensure that the message hasn't been tampered with.
Cryptography is one of those topics that can feel a bit intimidating, but it's really fascinating once you start digging into it.
It's the backbone of so many security technologies and protocols, so having a basic understanding is essential. And if you're prepping for the CCSP exam, you can bet there will be questions about cryptography.
So brush up on your symmetric and asymmetric cryptography, encryption algorithms, and key management.
Right? And let's not forget about data security and privacy, another critical piece of the puzzle.
It's like data is the new gold, right? It's incredibly valuable to businesses, governments, and individuals, which is why protecting it from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, or destruction is more important than ever.
Exactly. Data security is all about implementing safeguards to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of that precious data.
Okay, so confidentiality means keeping the data secret, only accessible to those who are authorized to see it. Integrity means making sure the data is accurate and hasn't been tampered with. And availability means ensuring authorized users can access the data when they need it.
You got it. And then we have data privacy, which focuses on giving individuals control over their own personal information.
Right. It's about respecting their right to decide how their data is collected, used, and shared. And we've got all these laws and regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR in Europe, that are designed to protect those rights.
Exactly. These regulations grant individuals the right to access their data, correct inaccuracies, and even request that their data be deleted.
So organizations have a huge responsibility to comply with these regulations and to safeguard the privacy of their customers, employees, and other stakeholders.
Absolutely. Data security and privacy go hand in hand. Protecting data from unauthorized access also protects the privacy of the individuals whose data it is. And respecting data privacy helps build trust and maintain a positive reputation. It's a win-win.
Now let's zoom in on a specific aspect of data security. Data loss prevention, or DLP.
DLP is all about preventing sensitive data from leaving the organization's control.
Like a security guard for your data, right?
Yeah.
Making sure no one's sneaking out with any classified document.
Precisely. DLP solutions employ a variety of techniques to detect and block sensitive data from being transmitted or stored in unauthorized locations. They might scan emails, documents, and other files for keywords, patterns, or other indicators of sensitive information.
So they're like bloodhounds sniffing out those confidential bits of data that shouldn't be leaving the building.
Exactly. They might also monitor network traffic for suspicious activity, like massive file transfers or data being sent to unusual destinations.
It's like having a watchful eye on all the exits, making sure no one's making off with the crown jewels.
DLP can be implemented at various stages in the data lifecycle. You can have DLP solutions on your endpoints, your network, your email servers, and even in the cloud. The goal is to create a comprehensive strategy that covers all the potential escape routes for sensitive data.
So it's like having a security perimeter around your data, no matter where it resides.
DLP is a critical component of any data security program. It helps protect your organization from data breaches, regulatory fines, and reputational damage, especially as more and more data is stored and processed in the cloud.
Speaking of the cloud, that brings us to another critical area: cloud security.
Cloud computing has revolutionized the way we work and live, giving us access to incredibly powerful resources and services that were once only available to large enterprises. But it's also introduced new security challenges.
It's like moving into a fantastic new house with all the latest gadgets, but realizing you might need to upgrade the security system.
Exactly. Cloud security is all about protecting your data and applications in this new environment. It involves understanding the unique risks and vulnerabilities of cloud environments and implementing the right controls to mitigate those risks.
And one of the trickiest parts is shared responsibility, right? The cloud provider is responsible for securing the underlying infrastructure, like the physical servers and network. But we, as the cloud customer, are responsible for securing our own data and applications.
Absolutely. It's a partnership. And understanding the shared responsibility model for your chosen cloud provider is essential for implementing the appropriate security controls.
So what are some of the key areas we need to focus on when it comes to cloud security?
It's a broad topic encompassing everything from identity and access management, data encryption, and network security to vulnerability management and incident response. And it's constantly evolving as new threats emerge.
It sounds like we need to stay on our toes and be ready to adapt.
Definitely. And choosing the right cloud deployment model for your needs is also important. There's public cloud, where you share resources with other organizations, private cloud, where you have dedicated resources for your own use, and hybrid cloud, which combines elements of both. Each model has its own unique security considerations.
So it's like choosing the right type of house for your family, taking into account your needs, your budget, and of course, security.
Exactly. And speaking of specialized tools, have you heard of cloud access security brokers, or CASBs?
I've heard the term, but honestly, I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
Think of them as gatekeepers between your organization and the cloud. They monitor traffic, enforce security policies, and help you gain control over your cloud usage.
So they're like Border Patrol agents, checking passports and making sure everyone entering and leaving the cloud is following the rules.
That's a great way to put it. CASBs can be used to protect data at rest, control access to cloud applications, prevent data leakage, and detect threats. They provide a centralized point of control for cloud security, giving you visibility into your cloud usage and helping you manage risk effectively.
It sounds like an essential tool, especially as organizations adopt more and more cloud services.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another key concept: secure DevOps.
DevOps is all about breaking down those silos between development and operations teams, automating the software development lifecycle, and delivering software faster and more efficiently. But how do we make sure we're not sacrificing security in the process?
That's the challenge. Traditional security practices often don't mesh well with the fast-paced nature of DevOps. Secure DevOps is about integrating security into every stage of the DevOps lifecycle. It's about shifting security left, incorporating security considerations from the very beginning of the development process.
So it's not about bolting security on at the end, it's about baking it in from the start.
Exactly. This includes things like code security analysis, vulnerability scanning, security testing, and a secure configuration management. It's about building security into the DNA of your software development process.
And fostering a culture of security within the DevOps team, right? Making sure everyone understands the importance of security and is empowered to make secure choices.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about automation. Automating security tasks makes them more efficient and effective, freeing up your team to focus on more strategic initiatives.
So walk me through a specific secure DevOps practice. What's infrastructure as code, or IAC, all about?
IAC is a revolutionary way of managing and provisioning infrastructure through code. Instead of manually configuring servers, networks, and other infrastructure components, you use code to define your desired state, and then tools like Terraform or Ansible automate the process of creating and configuring the infrastructure.
So it's like writing a recipe for your infrastructure and then having a robot chef do all the cooking.
That's a great analogy. IAC offers numerous benefits, including increased speed and efficiency, improved consistency and repeatability, and a reduced risk of human error. But like anything else, it also introduces new security challenges.
Right. If your code contains security vulnerabilities, those vulnerabilities can be amplified across your entire infrastructure.
Exactly. That's why Secure IAC is so important. It's about incorporating security best practices into your code from the start, using secure coding practices, scanning for vulnerabilities, and implementing strong access controls.
So it's about building security into the foundation of your infrastructure, just like you'd make sure the foundation of a house is strong and secure.
Precisely. And to make sure that foundation stays strong, we need to talk about continuous monitoring.
Okay, so continuous monitoring is like having security cameras and motion detectors throughout your house, right? You're constantly watching for any signs of trouble.
It's about having visibility into your environment and being able to detect and respond to incidents in real time. This involves collecting data from various sources like logs, security events, and network traffic, analyzing that data to identify patterns and anomalies, and taking action to respond to threats.
So it's not just about setting up the security systems, it's about actively monitoring them and being ready to respond if something goes wrong.
Exactly. And this is especially crucial in a DevOps environment where systems and applications are constantly being updated and changed. Continuous monitoring helps ensure those changes don't introduce new security risks and allows you to detect and respond to incidents quickly. It's about staying vigilant and proactive.
Wow, we've really covered a lot of ground, haven't we? Yeah. From social engineering to secure DevOps, it's been a whirlwind tour of the cybersecurity landscape.
It's amazing how interconnected everything is, right?
Yeah.
And we can't forget about one crucial aspect that often gets overlooked: physical security.
Yeah, in this digital age, it's easy to get so caught up in the virtual world that we forget about the real-world threats.
It's like building an impenetrable digital fortress, but leaving the front gate wide open. Physical security is about protecting your assets from those real-world threats like theft, vandalism, and even natural disasters.
It's the first line of defense. You can have the most sophisticated cybersecurity in the world, but if someone can just walk into your server room and walk out with your hard drives, it's game over.
Exactly. That's why physical security controls like locks, fences, surveillance cameras, and security guards are so crucial.
And it's not just about keeping bad guys out, right? We also need to think about protecting our assets from environmental threats like fires, floods, and power outages.
Exactly. Think fire suppression systems, backup generators, and disaster recovery plans. It's all about creating a layered approach to security where physical security works hand in hand with cybersecurity to protect your organization's valuable assets.
So it's like having a security system for your house.
Yes.
You wouldn't just rely on a strong front door. You'd also want windows, locks, and maybe even an alarm system.
Precisely. It's about having multiple layers of protection to make it as difficult as possible for anyone to compromise your security.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's becoming increasingly important in today's globalized world: supply chain security.
It's a critical aspect of cybersecurity that often gets overlooked. It's all about understanding and managing the risks associated with the products and services you rely on. Everything from the raw materials to the finished goods.
It's like a chain. If one link is weak, the entire chain is vulnerable.
Exactly. And in today's interconnected world, those supply chains can be incredibly complex. They might involve multiple suppliers, vendors, and distributors spread across different countries and continents.
That complexity makes it really challenging to track where everything is coming from and to ensure that every step in the process is secure.
And the consequences of a supply chain attack can be devastating. Think data breaches, product counterfeiting, and disruptions to critical infrastructure.
So how can organizations get a handle on this? Where do they even begin?
It starts with visibility. You need to understand your supply chain, identify your critical suppliers, assess their security practices, and put contracts in place that require them to meet certain security standards.
So it's not just about trusting your suppliers blindly. It's about verifying that they're taking security seriously and holding them accountable.
Right. It's about building strong relationships with your suppliers, collaborating on security, and sharing information about potential threats. It's a team effort.
And it's about having a plan in place for when things go wrong because, let's face it, no supply chain is completely immune to attacks.
Exactly. You need to know what steps you'll take to contain the damage, identify the root cause, and recover quickly. It's about building resilience into your operations.
Supply chain security is a complex and constantly evolving challenge, but it's one that organizations can't afford to ignore.
It's about taking a proactive approach to managing risk and ensuring that your business can withstand disruptions to its supply chain.
Well, I think we've officially covered everything but the kitchen sink today. From vulnerability management to supply chain security, we've hit all those key topics you need to know for the CCSP exam.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've explored the vast cybersecurity landscape and highlighted those essential concepts and best practices that can help you protect your organization's precious assets.
And if you found this deep dive helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We're always adding new content and exploring the fascinating world of cybersecurity.
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay secure.
Until next time.